Senator Winfield, do you accept the yield, sir?
Yes, Madam President.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So, I was supposed to think a little bit about what I was going to say and maybe write some things down and the things you do when you're discussing one of these bills. Didn't have time, so I'm going to talk about my mother. July 31st of this year will be 5 years since she passed. Almost as long as it took her to die. During the nearly 5 years it took her to die, spent a lot of that time trying to be present in all of the places where I was. Now, some of us have experienced the loss of a parent. It's devastating. It upends your world. But watching her die for that period of time was worse than even the death itself. I was fortunate in some ways. I don't have the kind of leave we're talking about at my job, my other job. But she was close enough that at night, after I worked, I could drive to New York to the hospital and see her and spend some time with her, even for the almost year that she spent in a coma. I was fortunate to be able to do that. There was a point at which, as our story goes, my mother didn't know that she had cancer. I dealt with all of her medical, and I didn't think it was something she needed to know. I thought she needed to focus on trying to be as strong as she could. And it was a point at which the doctors told her she had a couple of days to live. Now, the problem is my mother was strong, and she lived for another 2 years. But when they told her that, I was fortunate to be able to be there with my mother and do one of the hardest things I've had to do. Look at a woman who was able to look at me and have a conversation with me and joke with me even and say goodbye to her forever. It didn't work out that way, but I was fortunate to be able to be there. I was fortunate because I was close. But during all of that time, I was not present in the place where I needed to be present. I wasn't able to be the employee I needed to be. And when my mother died, I realized something. I always thought I came here because of a kid that I had encountered one day, and the story this young man told. And in a way, that's true. But the reality is that I came here because of my mother. Because my mother is where my story begins. And I always tell the story of my mother because it's important to my understanding of why I'm here and why I stand up and I just talk in the way I talk and I express in the way I express. My mother's story began not in the story she thought it began, and we all think our story begins when we're born. My mother's story began a long time before her, probably in the story of a woman named Araminta Ross, who we now commonly know as Harriet Tubman, because Harriet had the name Araminta and she married a man named Tubman. And my mother was the daughter of Araminta, who was the daughter of Harriet. My mother was Araminta, who was the daughter of Harriet, who was the daughter of Araminta. And I knew those names. I knew the connection to Harriet Tubman. I just didn't understand the connection in my mother's life. And right before my mother died, because I got to spend time with her, she talked to me about her story. And my mother told me that she hadn't done anything. of note in her life because I got to be there with her. And like any child, I wanted to say something to her to make her understand that she had done something important, but I was not able to do it. But I was able to be there with her. And I know now that my mother, she did a lot of important things. She gave me the passion that I have for people. She gave me the perspective that I have for the things that we work on here. Because my mother spent her life understanding what Harriet's mission was, which was to go back for those who had been left behind. Because Harriet got free, but she felt like she wasn't free until everybody else was. So that became the work of my life. And so it wasn't the young man that I thought put me here. It was the work that my mother had done on me. And so if I had the chance today to talk to her, of course, I would tell her that you had done something important. That you had created in me a desire to go back. But I wouldn't know that that was part of my story if I didn't have the opportunity to be there with my mother. I wouldn't know that that was her story either. And that's an important thing. I wouldn't be able to stand up today and tell a story about my mother that connects to the story of everybody here. This is not a bill that is about women or people with disabilities or whatever the other thing is. It's a story about all of us. This is about humanity. We come here to say that we offer a little bit of safety to people. It's at the core of what we do. I hope that we get to vote on this bill. And I hope if we do get to vote on this bill, that we take that into account, that we think about our own individual stories, but that we think about our humanity. And when we do, we cast a vote in the affirmative. Thank you, Madam President. I would ask if I could yield now to Senator Gerentano.